Former WWE and ECW World Heavyweight Champion Rob Van Dam makes his AEW debut last night on the Dynamite 200th episode, confronting Jack Perry with an FTW World Championship match being set up for next week's episode of Dynamite. MJF versus Adam Cole is official for the World Championship at All In at London's Wembley Stadium later on this month. Hikaru Shida is the brand new AEW Women's World Champion after defeating Toni Storm last night on Dynamite. MJF and the entire AEW roster thanked Tony Khan after Dynamite's 200th episode on TBS. There is going to be a mandatory meeting with the Jericho Appreciation Society next week on Dynamite of some interesting developments last night on the 200th episode. The Dark Order have also re-signed with All Elite Wrestling, in addition to the Elite signing yesterday. The Acclaimed have been announced for an upcoming episode of AEW Collision, and a parking lot fight is announced for this week's edition of AEW Rampage on TNT. Hey guys, welcome back to Wrestling News 365. Hope everyone is doing very well. As always, there are plenty of news stories to get into in the world of All Elite Wrestling. And let's start off talking about Rob Van Dam becoming All Elite, at least for a little while, because by stealing the FTW World Championship from Hook, Jack Perry has awakened the ghost of Extreme Championship Wrestling's past. First, he was confronted by Jerry Lynn, who is not cleared to compete in a wrestling match. So on this week's episode of AEW Dynamite, the 200th episode, Lynn called on an old friend, former ECW World Television Champion, World Heavyweight Champion, and former WWE Champion and TNA World Heavyweight Champion. Rob Van Dam made his All Elite Wrestling debut, walking out to the sounds of his classic entrance theme Walk by Pantera, and confronted Perry on Wednesday. Perry tried to attack Van Dam with a chair, but Van Dam avoided the attack and the FTW champion escaped through a hostile crowd in Florida. Later on in the show, Van Dam appeared in a backstage interview to say that he'll be facing Jungle Jerk on next week's Dynamite for the FTW championship. Perry has been the FTW champion since the July 19 episode of Dynamite, when he debuted a new villainous persona complete with a new look and new theme song. Perry's match with Van Dam will be his first defense since winning the championship. What did you think of Rob Van Dam's AEW debut? What are your thoughts on the match next week? There were rumors that the match could take place at All In at Wembley Stadium or All Out at the United Center. Will we see some kind of shenanigans next week, and then will we see the rematch being announced for either London or Chicago? Let me know your thoughts about that in the comment section below. Now, one match that has now been officially announced, the first match for AEW All In has been officially announced, and it's going to be an AEW World Championship main event. All Elite Wrestling's All In is on track to have a record-breaking attendance in Wembley Stadium in London, England, and the main event for the historic show has now been officially announced. On Wednesday night's Dynamite, AEW World Champion MJF made good on his promise to grant tag team partner and new best friend Adam Cole a title match, helping him get in touch with his kinder, gentler side, while the duo was on its path to winning the AEW Blind Eliminator Tag Team Tournament. MJF first thanked the crowd and Cole for helping him become more comfortable with opening up to the crowd and people in general, before presenting Cole with a contract for the match at the landmark event. Cole signed the contract and the two embraced, much to the chagrin of Cole's former friend Roderick Strong, who was shown watching backstage, as he has been consistently over the last few weeks. Strong was shown fuming over how close MJF and Cole have become when he was approached by Cole's former friends Matt Taven and Mike Bennett of the Kingdom. Taven told Strong that Cole has forgotten who his friends were. The title bout between MJF and Cole is the first match announced for All In, which is coming up on Sunday, August 27. Of course, if we get any more details on matches for the future, we'll let you know. But what are your thoughts on this main event? Is it a main event fitting of AEW All In at Wembley Stadium? Who do you think's going to win? And eventually one's got to turn on the other, so who turns on who? Is it going to be MJF being MJF, or is Adam Cole going to be the one that turns heel and turns on his new best friend? Last night's Dynamite was historic. It was the 200th episode, but also it saw a brand new Women's World Champion be crowned. Hikaru Shida is back on top of the AEW Women's division. She won the AEW Women's World Championship for the second time by defeating Toni Storm in the main event of the 200th episode of Dynamite on Wednesday night. Shida's championship win comes more than 2 years after Britt Baker ended her record-setting first reign as AEW Women's Champion at the Double or Nothing pay-per-view in May 2021. Shida Shida held the title for 372 days, carrying the AEW Women's Division through the lean times of empty arenas and restricted attendances during the COVID-19 pandemic. Now champion once again, Shida will likely carry the AEW Women's Championship into Wembley Stadium in London, England for the All-In pay-per-view, where a crowd approaching 80,000 fans is expected, a stark contrast to the sparse and sometimes non-existent crowds that Shida performed in during her first title reign. Storm was in her second reign as AEW Women's Champion, which comes to an end at 66 days. She held the championship for another 76 days during her first reign, which began after she won the title vacated by Thunder Rosa. Shida's win also comes at a time when AEW's women's division is under increased scrutiny. A fan sign holding and reading "Book the Women's Division Better" was shown during last week's Dynamite, and Baker and Taya Valkyrie faced criticism following a match between them last week as well. So what are your thoughts on the title victory, and what are your thoughts on Hikaru Shida being the brand new AEW Women's World Champion? Let me know your thoughts about that. Now, of course, as mentioned last night, was a big celebration for AEW, being the 200th episode on TBS. Well, since its inception back on TNT in 2019, that is. Now, AEW celebrated the 200th episode of Dynamite, and after the live broadcast ended, the celebrations continued, with wrestlers coming out on stage to thank AEW President, CEO, and General Manager Tony Khan. AEW World Champion MJF led the post-show festivities, calling Khan a visionary, and also crediting the Elite and Chris Jericho for taking the chance on the new company when it was still being formed. After he was done speaking, MJF said there were other people who wanted to thank Khan. That was followed by many wrestlers and other personnel coming out on the stage, while a graphic reading "Thank you, Tony Khan" was displayed. We have footage of the celebration in question. Take a closer look.
Damn, Tampa, you still look pretty. Shit! I wanted to come out here and just tell a very quick story. Now, when this company was started in 2019, prior to that, there was only one show in town if you wanted to make real money, and the name of that place was WWE. And around that time, there was most certainly interest in MJF. But there was a part of me that thought if I went there, my name might be Mordecai Schmeckel Jr. and I might have to walk out with a Draymalon or something. But then there was a visionary, and there was also a bunch of men called the Elite. And there was also a guy who, let's face it, we haven't always gotten along, but there was Chris Jericho, who took a serious leap, and all of them created an alternative. And that alternative gave opportunities for guys like your AEW World Champion, who's over as fuck. To get to be the versions of ourselves we wanted to be. So, Tony, what I wanted to say to you from the bottom of my heart is thank you. Thank you for making me a very rich man come 2024, because there's going to be a big bargaining thing. But, okay, now I'm getting ahead of myself, But in all sincerity, I'm not the only person who wants to thank you, Tony Khan.
Thank you, guys. I never expected to meet the world, to have all of you here. I wanted tonight to be special. Our first time ever in Tampa. This great city. The 200th episode of AEW Dynamite. The biggest wrestling show ever in AEW. The biggest wrestling show ever in London. The biggest wrestling show ever in Europe. And hopefully the biggest wrestling show ever in the world. And tonight is one of the most important nights of my life. Thank you to everybody on the stage. Thank you to
Now, Chris Jericho was part of that celebration, but on camera, on television, things aren't going too well for the Ocho. Now, kicking off last night's AEW Dynamite 200, a big match featuring Chris Jericho possibly making a very important choice. In a big moment in AEW, Chris Jericho seemingly elected to move forward with joining the Don Callis family after tag teaming with Konosuke Takeshita against his own former proteges. With recent weeks seeing the slow dissolution of the Jericho Appreciation Society, Jericho may have delivered the final blow himself last night on Dynamite 200. During the match against Jericho's own faction members, Daniel Garcia and Sammy Guevara, Don Callis took his heelish behavior to new heights, and Chris Jericho seemingly joined him. Using Chris Jericho's baseball bat Floyd to his advantage, Don Callis smashed it into the head of Daniel Garcia before Chris Jericho went for the pin and won the match. Afterward, Jericho celebrated with Konosuke Takeshita and Don Callis, while commentary was wondering aloud on numerous occasions whether Jericho just revealed his choice about his future in All Elite Wrestling. After the match in a backstage segment, Renee Paquette attempted to ask Jericho what happened, but JAS member Daddy Magic Matt Menard interrupted, telling Jericho that next week on Dynamite there would be a mandatory Jericho Appreciation Society meeting. He walked away without waiting for Jericho to confirm his attendance. Unless plans have changed for All In, Jericho is set for a match against New Japan Pro Wrestling star Will Ospreay, which would lead one to believe that actually Jericho may be staying with the JAS after all. So we'll have to stay tuned to what happens in the mandatory meeting next week. Now, yesterday, the big story was the Elite re-signing and staying with All Elite Wrestling, but they're not the only faction that's staying. The Dark Order have been mainstays of AEW, and they're also staying as well. The Elite is not the only group whose future in All Elite Wrestling is now secure. On the heels of the news that Kenny Omega, Hangman Adam Page, and the Young Bucks have re-signed with AEW, Fightful Select has reported that the Dark Order recently also signed new deals with the company. Alex Reynolds, Evil Uno, and John Silver got 3-year extensions that run through the year 2026. Uno brought the news to light Wednesday when he retweeted AEW's announcement about the contract extensions for the Elite. Quote, "Dark Order also re-signed," Uno wrote. "Where's our press release?" Dark Order has been a constant in AEW since the company's earliest days, debuting at the Fight for the Fallen pay-per-view in 2019. Its journey, though, has been far from smooth. A show-closing angle on Dynamite at the end of 2019, in which the Dark Order attacked the Elite, was panned by critics. Dark Order rebounded under the leadership of the late Mr. Brody Lee. Buoyed by the light-hearted segments on Being the Elite, its popularity grew and Lee won the TNT Championship. But the end of Lee's title reign was the last match of his career and life. He died from a rare lung disease in December 2020. Fans rallied behind Dark Order's remaining members, and an alliance of Hangman Adam Page propelled it back into main event matches. Over more recent years, Dark Order saw its membership dwindle. Alan Angels and Stu Grayson left AEW, although Grayson has since returned to the company. Anna Jay and Preston Vance jumped to other factions, and Colt Cabana has faded into a backstage role. Reynolds, Silver, and Uno have soldiered on. They're regulars in the rebooted Ring of Honor, and recently impressed in a Fight Without Honor against the Righteous and their former stablemates Stu Grayson at the Death Before Dishonor pay-per-view. So what are your thoughts on the Dark Order sticking around in All Elite Wrestling? Of course, AEW Collision on Saturday on TNT has got stiff competition from SummerSlam. It's a big World Championship or Real World Championship main event. But a promo segment with Max Caster and Anthony Bowens of The Acclaimed has been added to the lineup for Saturday, August 5th episode of AEW Collision. A week after their loss in a Trios Championship match against the House of Black, The Acclaimed will speak on Saturday's Collision. Their teammate Billy Gunn was pinned in the Trios title match and left his boots in the ring after the bout, seemingly symbolizing his retirement. The Acclaimed will now presumably address Gunn on Collision. 3 title bouts are also set for Saturday's episode as CM Punk defends the real AEW World Championship against Ricky Starks. FTR defend the AEW World Tag Team Championships against Big Bill and Brian Cage. Plus Chris Statlander defends the TBS Championship against Mercedes Martinez. Finally, a big match has been announced for this week's edition of AEW Rampage on TNT. It's going to be a parking lot fight. Yes. A parking lot fight is set for Friday's AEW Rampage as the Blackpool Combat Club's Jon Moxley and Claudio Castagnoli will take on the Best Friends, that being Chuck Taylor and Trent Beretta. The match came to be after Wednesday's Anything Goes 3-way on Dynamite between Moxley, Beretta, and Penta El Zero Miedo. After Beretta won, Castagnoli and Wheeler Yuta were shown fighting with Taylor and Orange Cassidy in the crowd. After things settled down, Taylor took to the microphone afterwards to make the challenge. The match will not be held in Tampa, Florida after Dynamite, but rather father at Daly's place in Jacksonville, Florida. It's assumed to be filmed Thursday, which is why Moxley was pulled from his scheduled match with Wrestling Revolver in Ohio. Taylor and Beretta had a famous parking lot fight with Santana and Ortiz in September 2020 during the pandemic era at Daly's place on Dynamite. After they attacked and bloodied up Nick Wayne in his home ring where his father taught him how to wrestle, Swerve Strickland and AR Fox will be in tag team action too. With all the turmoil surrounding the Jericho Appreciation Society, the group's Anna Jay will also take on Sky Blue. In trios action, Keith Lee will team with the Hardys against Kip Sabian and the Butcher and the Blade. So that certainly is a jam-packed show for Friday. But there you go, guys. It's latest AEW news for you. Be sure to smash a like on the like button. Be sure to subscribe, bottom right-hand corner. As always, let me know your thoughts in the comment section below, and I'll speak to you again very, very soon. Hey guys, thank you for watching, listening, streaming, or however you come across this video today. Be sure to click on the video on the right there to watch our next video, or click the bottom there to subscribe, or the bottom right hand corner. Thank you very much, and I'll speak to you again very soon.